Hey guys, welcome to another Thursday edition of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. My name is Nick. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite bands, Pearl Jam, and my top 5 Pearl Jam albums. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that link down below and go check out the Vinyl Den Facebook group. You know I say it every episode, but just a cool place to continue the music conversation. Doesn't necessarily have to be about vinyl records. We talk about pretty much anything music related in there. There's also a couple of other links there. There's one for the Vinyl Den merch page. We got t-shirts and sweatshirts on there. And there's also one for the Vinyl Den Patreon page. If you want to support the show, it's always greatly appreciated. If you enjoy the episode, make sure you give me the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we release new episodes. So this past Sunday, Ian and I released a video about where we talked about 10 album suggestions. And kind of the whole idea of that video was to talk about one Pearl Jam album in particular that I wanted to talk about. One that I don't feel like it gets enough love. And then, over the course of the video, I completely forgot to talk about that album. So I decided to kind of not only talk about that album, but talk about, because in my top 5 as far as Pearl Jam albums go. So I figured I'd also kind of go through my top 5. I didn't want to do their whole discography because I got 11 studio albums. I didn't really want to do a 20-minute long video. So at number 5 is the album I wanted to talk about. This was released October 15th, 2013, so just past its 8-year anniversary. But this is Lightning Bolt, and if this is kind of the album that I feel doesn't really get enough love from Pearl Jam fans. It's an album that, to be completely honest, I never really even gave a shot until I'd say within the last year. I finally I bought the album and decided to give it a spin and check it out. And I was really kind of blown away by some of the tracks on this album. First off, Pendulum I thought was a great song. Pendulum is probably one of my top maybe 10 Pearl Jam songs. Other songs that are great on here, you got Sirens, like I said, Pendulum, Sleeping by Myself, Infallible. Those are all great tracks. Musically, I think this is an incredible album. I think where it kind of loses some people is lyrically. Not all of the songs are that great, but I feel like a lot of the songs on here are really great tracks. This is a good album from beginning to end. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash on any of the songs on here, but I think some of the greatness of some of the other tracks maybe kind of covers up where some of the other songs are kind of lacking. And that's not like lyrically they're bad songs. Like I said, it's just ones that, nothing really stood out to me. But I'd say overall, this is a great album from beginning to end. At number 4 is an album that I think also gets really forgotten about as far as, Pearl Jam albums go. And it was actually the album that kind of brought me back into, some of Pearl Jam's later albums. I was a huge Pearl Jam fan in the 90s. I think it was probably No Code. I think when No Code was released, I kind of lost interest in the band. And not because the music wasn't as good as what it had been. I think my musical interest had kind of gone in a different direction. I'd gotten a lot more into punk and ska. And Pearl Jam didn't really kind of fit in that mold. So I never really gave, I'd say from I listened to No Code a couple of times and then kind of forgot about Pearl Jam really largely until within the last, I'd say probably 5 or 6 years, I've been slowly getting back into their music. And with this album at number 4, I heard the track Just Breathe. And I was like, wow, this is a fantastic song. I went back and listened to this album, and that kind of led me into the rest of Pearl Jam's collection. And I kind of, remembered, how great this band was and really is. And even their newest album, Gigaton, which came out in 2019, fantastic album. Not in my top 5, but it's definitely just outside. Maybe probably if I had to rank them all together, probably 6 or 7. Gigaton is. But at number 4. This is a Backspacer. This was released, I got to look at my notes because I don't remember what year it was. It was February 3rd. I'm sorry, looked at the wrong one. September 20th, 2009. So this is definitely a more recent album within the last, 10, 15 years. And, I think this is an album that musically, I think, brings back, a lot, like I said, a lot of that harder sound, not that Pearl Jam was ever all that hard, but that harder edge that I think was missing from some of their albums, from, Avocado, Riot Act, some of those, even though they had harder tracks, I think this album just, the harder edge to it kind of worked a little bit better. And, some of the better tracks on here, of course, Just Breathe is a fantastic one, probably one of my top 15 or 20 Pearl Jam tracks. The Fixer, The End, Supersonic, all those are just fantastic songs. Some of my favorite songs off here. But Backspacer, number 4, like I said, great album. At number 3 is an album that a lot of people would probably rank higher. I know a couple people that they believe this is Pearl Jam's best album overall, and it is a great album. Like I said, I don't think Pearl Jam has made a bad album. I just want to say that. But this album is what I think is lyrically and musically their most complete album, their most focused album. It's got some absolutely killer tracks on it. This was released February 3rd, 1998. At number 3 is Yield. Like I said, it's just a great album. Some of my favorite tracks off here, the two singles that were released off here were Given to Fly and Wish List. Both of them are fantastic tracks. In Hiding is a great track. All Those Yesterdays was actually written by Stone Gossard, lyrically, musically. It just, I think Stone actually wrote 2 or 3 tracks off of Yield. But like I said, Yield is an album that, it was released in 98, that late 90s period. Like I said, I was kind of moving away from Pearl Jam. I was into punk, ska, that kind of stuff, and Pearl Jam didn't really kind of fit that mold, but this is an album that I did go back and listen to probably, I'd say, mid-2000s, 2006, 2007, and I was really impressed with the album, and this is probably one of the more spun albums I have of my Pearl Jam collection. Like I said, just an incredible album from beginning to end. It's one that, if you haven't checked out, it's definitely a great one to check out. So my top 2, I could have gone either way with. Both these albums are 2 of my favorite albums of all time. But at number 2, I decided to go with 10. This was released August 27th, 1991. 1991 was an incredible year for music, probably one of the most influential years in music. But 10 actually didn't really get popular until 1992. So it took a little while for it to kind of build up steam. And I think this album, Pearl Jam with this album, I think kind of incorrectly got pushed into that grunge label. I never really kind of considered them grunge. I felt like there was a little more musicality to their tracks that I think was lacking in a lot of grunge music. Grunge overall was like a 4-year thing. It was like, 1989 to 1993. Is all that. Grunge, the only time that grunge music really ever existed. I think a lot of bands in that early 90s period got kind of pushed in that label and didn't really deserve it. And I think this is an album that just is an absolutely fantastic album. Like I said, I think Head and Shoulders is better than a lot of other, music that was released in the early 90s, the quote-unquote grunge music. But, some of my favorite tracks on here, what I want to say about this album is so much better or so much more than just the couple of tracks that everyone knows, Once, Alive, Jeremy. Those are all great tracks. I think the second side of this album is really what makes this album great. And, you got on the second side, Oceans, Porch, Garden, Deep, Release. Those are all fantastic tracks. Yes, Alive is a fantastic track. Black is probably one of my favorite Pearl Jam tracks. But, like I said, I think it's the second side of this album that really kind of gets overlooked a lot of times by music fans. And it's one that I think definitely deserves a second chance if you haven't listened to it in a while. So at number 1, I've got an album that, I guess a lot of you probably out there have figured out what I've got at number 1. But this was released October 19th, 1993. So it just celebrated its, 28th year anniversary. But at number 1, I've got Verses by Pearl Jam. This is an album that, released, like I said, even 28 years later. So many of these tracks are still relevant. I have long considered this one of the top 5 or 10 albums ever released. And, There's tracks on here that are, there's tracks about disillusionment, anger, gun violence, abuse, police harassment and brutality, defiance, gun violence. There's so many different themes that go through this album that, like I said, 28 years later are still very relevant. This is an album that, like I said, could be released, yesterday, let alone 28 years ago. And just musically, fantastic album. Lyrically, an incredible album. And like I said, one that, this is probably an album that, is probably one of my most listened to out of all my albums. Some of my favorite tracks on here: Daughter, WMA, which of course stands for White Male America, Rearview Mirror, Rats, Indifference, all just great tracks. Like I said, from beginning to end, there's not a track that I skip on this album. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Drop me a comment down below and let me know what your favorite Pearl Jam albums are. Because like I said, I don't think that there's a bad album in their discography. I know there's a lot of debate around that, but let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you come back and check out the show on Sunday. Well, that's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.